Introduction. The question underneath everything. There is a question that lives underneath almost every other question we ask. It hides beneath the disappointment we never say out loud, beneath the prayers that felt like they bounced off the ceiling and came back unanswered, beneath the nights when we lay awake wondering if any of this is actually working in our favor, if there is actually someone on the other side of our reaching. The question is simple, but it is heavy. Is God actually good? Not good in some distant, theological, untouchable way, not good the way a textbook definition is good, but good to me, personally, really, in my actual life, in the middle of what I am walking through right now. That question deserves a real answer, not a rehearsed one, not a bumper sticker one, not the kind of answer that sounds right on Sunday morning but falls apart by Tuesday night when the pressure comes back and the circumstances still haven't changed. This is going to be an honest conversation, because the people who love God the most are sometimes the ones who wrestle with this the hardest. And there is nothing wrong with that. Wrestling with the question does not mean you lack faith. Sometimes it means your faith is actually alive enough to ask real things of a real God. We are not going to spend this time pretending that believing in God's goodness is easy. We are not going to gloss over the moments when goodness felt absent. We are not going to act like those seasons of confusion and loss and waiting never happened. Because they did happen. They are real. Your experience of them is valid. And a God who is truly good can hold your honest questions without crumbling under the weight of them. So let's talk about it. Let's go past the surface. Let's look at the evidence. Not just the comfortable evidence, but all of it. The hard parts, the confusing parts. The parts that made you question and the parts that brought you back. And let's see, by the time we're done, if the verdict still holds, because I believe it does. I believe when you really look, when you stop requiring God to be good only in the ways you have personally defined goodness, you will find something so much bigger than what you were looking for. God is good. Let me walk you through why I believe that, and why, if you will let yourself sit with it, I believe you will come to believe it too. Part 1. He is good in how he made you. Let's start at the very beginning. Not just the beginning of your story, but the beginning of you. You did not assemble yourself. You did not choose your capacity for thought, your ability to feel deeply, your sense of wonder, your hunger for meaning and connection and purpose. Those things were placed inside you, designed into you, woven through you before you ever took your first breath. Think about that for a moment. The same intelligence that set the stars in their orbits, that calculated the exact gravitational pull needed to keep planets in motion and ecosystems in balance. That same intelligence sat down, so to speak, and thought about you. Intentionally, specifically, with purpose and care that we cannot fully comprehend. Not a generic version of you, not a mass-produced model, but you, with your particular mind and your particular sensitivities, your particular way of seeing the world, your laugh, your grief, your resilience, your specific, one-of-a-kind combination of gifts and questions and longings. A God who was indifferent would not have bothered with the details. A God who was merely functional would have made us all the same, interchangeable, emotionless, efficient. But that is not what he did. He made diversity. He made complexity. He made you in a way that has never existed before and will never exist again. He made you capable of joy. Think about what that actually means. He didn't have to. Joy serves no purely mechanical purpose. It is not required for survival. And yet, he wired it into the human experience because he intended for there to be delight. For there to be moments when life feels like a gift and not just a task. He made you capable of love. The deepest kind. The kind that costs something. The kind that changes you from the inside out. The kind that makes you willing to sacrifice for another person. To stay when leaving would be easier. To forgive when holding on to the offense feels more natural. That capacity for love, it is not an accident of evolution or an error in the design. It is a reflection. It is the image of the one who made you showing up in how you were designed to relate to the world and to others. He made you with the ability to hope, even after disappointment, even after betrayal, even after the thing you believed in with your whole heart didn't come together the way you expected. Somewhere inside you, hope resurfaces. Something in you reaches forward again. That is not naive. That is architecture. You were built to reach forward. You were built to not stay down. He gave you a conscience, a sense of right and wrong, an internal compass that tells you when something is off, even before your mind catches up. He gave you the capacity to feel another person's pain as if it were your own, to be moved by what happens to people you've never met, to care about justice in situations that don't directly affect you. That kind of moral awareness is not a survival mechanism. It is the fingerprint of a moral God. And then there is this. He made you curious. He gave you a mind that asks questions, that searches for meaning, that is not content to just exist, but wants to understand, to grow, to discover. A God who did not want to be known would not have created beings with an intrinsic drive to seek. But he did. And that drive, that longing, points back to the one it was designed to find. Everything about how you are made points toward a maker who is good, not just competent, not just powerful, but genuinely good. Intentional and generous and deeply invested in the kind of creature you are and the life you are designed to live. You are not an accident. You are not a mistake. You are not a cosmic afterthought. You are the work of hands that do not make junk. The thought of a mind that does not plan carelessly. The expression of a love that chose you before you could choose anything. That is the first evidence. Look at yourself honestly, and what you see is the fingerprint of a good God. Part 2. He is good in how he sustains you. Now let's talk about something we almost never think to talk about, because we are far too used to it. We are too used to waking up, too used to breathing, too used to the way our hearts beat without our instruction, and our lungs fill without our conscious effort, and our bodies carry us through day after day, doing 10,000 things we have never once stopped to be grateful for. We take the ordinary sustaining of our lives entirely for granted, and I understand why. When something never fails, we stop noticing it. We stop counting it as grace. We forget that something that never breaks is extraordinary precisely because of its consistency. But step back for a moment. Think about how many things have to work correctly every single day just for you to be here right now. Your heart has to beat. Your blood has to flow. Your mind has to function. The sun has to rise. The food you eat has to nourish you. The air around you has to contain exactly what your body needs. The ground beneath your feet has to hold. You did not arrange any of that. You did not schedule it. You do not maintain it. You simply woke up and it was all in place. Again, the way it has been every single morning of your life. That is sustaining grace. That is the goodness of God showing up in the most ordinary and most overlooked corners of your existence. And it goes further than the physical. There have been seasons in your life that should have broken you. Seasons when the weight was heavier than you thought a person could carry and still stand. Seasons when you said to yourself, or maybe to God, directly, I cannot do this anymore. And yet somehow you did. Not because you were stronger than you believed, not because the circumstances became easier, but because something underneath you held when everything in you felt like it should have given way. That is not luck. That is not coincidence. That is a God who said, not this one, not today. I'm going to hold what they cannot hold on their own. Think about the relationships that showed up at exactly the right time. The person who said exactly the thing you needed to hear at the exact moment you needed to hear it. Think about the door that opened when everything else around it had closed. The provision that came from a direction you never expected, through a source you hadn't considered, in a form you hadn't planned for. Think about the idea that came to you out of nowhere that solved the problem you had been staring at for weeks. Think about the peace that settled over you in the middle of a situation that had no logical reason to feel peaceful. Think about the moment when you were sure you were going to fall apart and something kept you together. Sustaining grace does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like making it through another week. Sometimes it looks like sleep finally coming when your mind was spinning in circles. Sometimes it looks like a laugh breaking through in the middle of a hard season, reminding you that joy still lives in you, that it has not been permanently evicted. A God who was not good would not sustain you. He would not keep showing up in the background of your ordinary days, making sure the framework of your life continues to hold. That kind of faithfulness, that consistency, that quiet, unannounced, uncelebrated provision is one of the clearest expressions of goodness there is. You are still here. Let that mean something to you today. You are still here, And that is not despite God, it is because of Him. Part 3. He is good in what He allows. This is the part that is the hardest to talk about. This is the part where most people get stuck when they try to reconcile the goodness of God with the reality of their own lives. If God is good, why does He allow hard things? Why does He allow loss? Why does He allow pain that goes on longer than it should? Why does He allow seasons that feel like abandonment even when we are doing our best to trust Him and walk rightly? I am not going to give you a simple answer to that, because the simple answer is not the true answer. And you deserve the truth more than you deserve the comfort of something that sounds good but doesn't hold up. Here is what I know, what I have observed, what I have lived and what I have seen in the lives of people I love and the stories of people who walked before us. The hardest seasons of our lives are also, most often, the seasons where the deepest things in us are built. Not always, not in a way that makes the pain feel worthwhile while you're in it, but in a way that, when we look back, we can often trace the line between what we went through and who we became because we went through it. Character is not built in comfort. It simply is not. You can want it to be. You can wish there were a gentler path. But the qualities that we most deeply respect in human beings, resilience, humility, compassion, patience, the ability to hold on to hope under sustained pressure, those qualities do not come from easy seasons. They come from walked through seasons. They come from the fire. A God who shielded you from every difficulty would not be raising you into the fullness of who you were made to be. He would be keeping you small. He would be preserving you from the very experiences that would develop you into the person the next chapter of your life is going to require. Think about what you know now that you did not know before the hard thing. Think about the depth of empathy you carry for other people in pain because you have been in pain. Think about the faith you have now, not the borrowed faith of someone who read about God's faithfulness in someone else's story, but the earned faith of someone who lived it, who held on through the night that felt like it would never end, who walked through the valley and came out the other side not with all the answers, but with a different kind of knowing. That knowing is precious. It cannot be bought. It cannot be given. It can only be developed. And God, in His goodness, refuses to rob you of the opportunity to develop it, even when development hurts. Now hear me carefully here. This does not mean every painful thing is God's design. It does not mean He engineered every loss. It does not mean He is unmoved by what you suffer. He is not distant from your pain. He is not observing it from a safe remove. He is present in it, actively working in it. He is not standing outside watching through a window. He is inside the fire with you. What God allows is not always what God desires. But in His wisdom and sovereignty, He is always working even within what He permits, turning things that were intended to harm you into things that refine you, taking what the enemy meant for destruction and redirecting it toward development. That is goodness operating on a level that our immediate comfort cannot measure. That is a Father who loves you too much to let even your hardest moments be wasted on you. Nothing you have been through is going to be wasted. Not the grief, not the confusion, not the years that felt like loss, not the season that broke something in you. God is too good and too resourceful to waste a single experience in your life, not even the ones that hurt the most. Part 4. He is good in how He redirects. Has God ever closed a door in your face? Not a cracked door, not a door that closed slowly while you had time to adjust, but a door that shut hard. That locked. That showed no sign of reopening regardless of how long you stood there hoping. A door you had believed with everything in you was supposed to open for you. Maybe it was a relationship you had prayed over, a job that seemed like the right fit, a city you had your heart set on, a plan you had built your future around and spent real time and real energy pursuing with genuine faith. And then, it didn't happen. It didn't open, and you were left standing in the hallway wondering what you missed, wondering what you did wrong, wondering if God had somehow forgotten what He started in you. Can I tell you something about closed doors? They are not failures. They are not rejections. They are redirections. And a God who redirects you is not working against you. He is working for you in a way that requires a broader view than the one you currently have access to. We make our plans with the information available to us, but we are always working with incomplete information. We can only see what is directly in front of us. We do not see what is 5 years ahead of the decision we're making right now. We do not see what the relationship would have become in its third year when the real work started. We do not see what the opportunity would have demanded from us 3 seasons in when the cost became clear. We do not see what the path we chose would have taken from us that we could never have gotten back. God sees all of it, the whole picture, every consequence, every connection, every thread. And sometimes, the most loving thing He can do for you is say, "Not that one, not yet, not this way. I need you to turn around." The redirection feels like rejection in the moment. I want to honor that. It genuinely does. It feels like loss. It feels like the door being closed on something you wanted. And you are allowed to feel those things fully. Grief over what did not happen is a real kind of grief. But grief and truth can exist at the same time. The truth is that some of the best things in your life right now exist only because something else did not work out. Some of the people who matter most to you came into your life through a route that only opened up after a different route closed behind you. Some of the growth you are most grateful for only happened because you were moved out of a plan that would have kept you comfortable but not whole. When God redirects you, He is not punishing you. He is not withholding from you out of indifference. He is not failing to see your need. He is protecting the thing you are becoming and making space for something that will serve not just the person you are today, but the person you are on your way to becoming. Trust the redirection, not because you can see where it leads, not because it makes sense in this moment, but because the one doing the redirecting sees everything you cannot yet see. And He is good. He has been good. And His track record in your life, if you will honestly look at it, bears that out. Part 5. He is good in what He withholds. This might be the section that requires the most from you today, because we have all sat with something we wanted deeply, something we believed we needed, something we prayed for with sincerity and real faith and real consistency. And it did not come. And after a while, the waiting began to feel less like a delay and more like a denial, less like patience being required and more like something being permanently withheld. And in that gap, in the space between what we asked for and what we received, it is very easy to start building a quiet case against the goodness of God. Easy to say, if He really loved me, He would have given me this by now. If He really cared about what I was going through, He would not have let me want this for this long without an answer. But here is a truth I want to sit with you in for a moment. A good parent does not give their child everything the child asks for, not because they don't love them, but precisely because they do, because they understand things the child does not yet understand, because they can see consequences the child is not yet equipped to see, because they know what the thing the child is asking for would actually do to the child if they received it before they were ready, or perhaps at all. Withholding is not the opposite of love. Sometimes it is the most active and intentional expression of love available. Think about the things you wanted at one stage of your life that you now understand were not right for that season. Think about the people you desperately hoped would stay who left and whose leaving, as painful as it was, made room for something more aligned, something that actually fit who you were becoming, instead of who you had been. Think about the season of waiting that felt unbearable while you were in it. That turned out to be the precise time you needed to build the things inside you that the next chapter was going to require of you. The timing of God's provision is inseparable from His goodness. He does not just give the right things. He gives them at the right time. And the right time is not always your preferred time. Sometimes the right time is later than you wanted. Sometimes it is in a form you didn't expect. Sometimes it arrives through a process that required you to grow first. What God withholds, He withholds for a reason. Not every reason will be immediately visible. Not every reason will become clear within the timeline you are operating in. Some reasons you will not fully understand on this side of eternity. And that requires something difficult of you. It requires trust in the character of God even when you cannot see the logic of His hand. But here is what I want to anchor you to. The withholding of one thing does not negate the provision of everything else. The answer of not yet or not this one does not erase the many other times He showed up. The closed hand in one area does not cancel the open hand in every other area of your life. God's goodness is not conditional on giving you everything you ask for. It is demonstrated in the totality of how He moves through your life, including, and sometimes especially, in what He chooses not to place in your hands before you are genuinely ready to receive it and steward it well. The withholding is not cruelty, it is care, wrapped in the kind of love that refuses to be short-sighted on your behalf. And the God who cares enough to withhold is the same God who promises that what you genuinely need will be provided at exactly the right time, in exactly the right measure. That is a goodness you can rest in, even when you do not fully understand it. Part 6. He is good in how He restores. There is something I need you to know about the God we serve. He is not a God of clean slates only. He is a God of broken things made whole. He is a God who works with what has been through the fire, who sees value in what has been discarded, who looks at what the rest of the world has written off and sees a restoration project rather than a lost cause. You may be carrying something right now that feels beyond repair, a relationship that feels irreparably damaged, a reputation that feels like it cannot be rebuilt, a sense of self that has been so badly wounded you are not sure who you are underneath the injury, a dream that was crushed before it fully formed, a version of yourself that you are not sure still exists anywhere underneath everything you have carried and lost and walked through. What looks irreparable to you is a renovation project to God. Think about how restoration actually works in the real world, not the version that skips the messy middle, but the real process. Real restoration is slow. It is not linear. It involves tearing things down before they can be rebuilt correctly. It requires stripping away what doesn't belong before putting in what does. It involves a period of looking worse than when you started before it begins to look better. A period of uncertainty and undoneness that feels like failure but is actually part of the process. God is not afraid of the mess in the middle of your restoration. He is not deterred by how far down you feel you have gone. He is not calculating whether you have earned what He wants to do for you, because restoration has never been about earning. It has always been about grace, about the decision of a God who says, "There is still more to do here. I am not done with this one, not by a long way." The very fact that you are still breathing, still reaching, still here today, listening to these words, is evidence that your story is not over, that the final chapter has not been written yet, that the hand of God has not released you to your worst moment as your permanent address. He restores. He restores years that felt like they were lost to things you are not proud of. He restores relationships that seemed too fractured to survive. He restores health in bodies that medicine had already given up on. He restores clarity in minds that confusion had occupied for too long. He restores joy that grief had buried under layer after layer of loss. He restores identity that shame had worked hard to permanently erase. He restores purpose that failure had tried to extinguish once and for all. And what makes this restoration so distinctly an act of His goodness is this. He does not restore you simply back to where you were before things fell apart. He restores you further, deeper, more complete. Because the rebuilding always incorporates the lessons of the falling, the strength that was developed in the surviving, the wisdom that could only be earned on the hard road. You do not come out of genuine God-worked restoration the same person who went in. You come out better, more anchored, more compassionate, more honest about your own limitations and more dependent on His faithfulness, more grateful for what remained when things fell apart, more settled in what actually matters and less distracted by what doesn't. That is what a good God does with broken things. He makes them into testimonies. He takes what was lost and makes it a foundation for what comes next. He takes the thing that almost ended you and makes it the thing that introduces the next chapter. He is a God who restores. And that restoration, from the inside out, from the ground up, at whatever stage of your story you are in right now, that is one of the deepest demonstrations of His goodness you will ever witness in your own life. Closing, the goodness you can trust. We have covered a lot of ground today. Let's bring it together. So now I want to ask you something honest. What would change in your daily life if you actually believed this? Not just agreed with it intellectually, not just nodded along because it sounded right, but actually believed in the marrow of who you are, that God is good. To you, personally, in the middle of your actual, specific, complicated, imperfect life. What would change in how you pray? Would you still approach prayer like someone who is not sure they are being heard, or unsure whether the one listening actually cares about the outcome? Or would you pray like someone who knows the one on the other side is not indifferent, is not manipulative, is not arbitrary, but is genuinely and completely and consistently for you, working on your behalf even in the silences? What would change in how you wait? Would waiting still feel like punishment for something you did or didn't do? Or would it begin to feel like preparation, like the space between where you are and where you are going, being actively filled with exactly what the next chapter is going to require of you? What would change in how you face difficulty? Would hard seasons still feel like evidence that God has abandoned you or is indifferent to you? Or would they begin to feel like evidence of a God who trusts you enough to walk you through something that is going to cost you something real? Because He knows what the other side looks like, and He knows you are capable of getting there. The goodness of God is not a concept designed for easy seasons. It is an anchor for every season. It is the thing you hold on to, not because everything in your life makes sense at the moment, but because the character of the one holding you has been demonstrated too many times, in too many ways, to be dismissed or explained away. He has been good in the things you asked for and the things you didn't, in the open doors and the closed ones, in the seasons of abundance and the seasons of withholding, in the joy and in the grief and in the in-between spaces where you weren't sure what to call what you were feeling, in the breakthroughs and in the waiting, in the restoration and in the painful process that preceded it. His goodness does not depend on your circumstances agreeing with it. It is not suspended when life is hard. It is not earned by your performance or forfeited by your failure or diminished by your doubt. His goodness is not a reward reserved for your best seasons. It is a constant, a thread running through every single chapter of your life, whether you can see it clearly or whether you are squinting through tears trying to find it. God is good, not in spite of what you have been through, not in a way that requires you to pretend the hard things weren't hard, but in the deepest, most durable, most trustworthy sense of the word. Good, to the core, without deviation, without condition, without end. And you're held by that goodness right now, in this moment, in whatever you are carrying today, in whatever you are still waiting for, in whatever you are slowly recovering from, in whatever you are beginning to believe again after a season of not believing. You are held by a God who is good, and that is enough to keep going.